Welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we help you make marriage real, fun, and simple. Each week, we have honest conversations about one simple thing that can make your marriage better. Because when your marriage is better, everything's better. I'm CJ, and this week, I'm joined by our resident newlywed, Afton.
Hi.
And our 23-year marriage veteran. He's an author, speaker, and the director of marriedpeople.org, Ted Lowe.
Hey, guys.
And today on the Married People Podcast, we're talking about the question, how do we prepare our marriage for our first baby? And friends, I'm really excited about today's topic.
Well, yeah, if our listeners have been listening for a while, they're probably like, why are you guys doing this topic? Because none of you have babies.
Well,
but we've got some pretty exciting stuff happening here.
Yes, if you're a keen listener of the podcast, you'll know that my wife and I have been trying for a little while.
Not a little while, a long while.
A long while.
A long
And we recently found out that we're pregnant. So, and
Yay!
well, Terry's pregnant.
Yeah.
I'm with her
Right.
along in the journey, right?
That's always a weird phrase
yeah,
when I hear
we're
it.
pregnant.
But
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
She's
Only one of us
pregnant,
is
you're
pregnant.
around.
Yeah, yeah. I am nearby. So it is
That's so exciting.
Been really exciting, and I'm thrilled about this conversation because hey, this is going to help me out here.
Yeah.
I'm pumped.
You're in the loop now. And I mean, you're not the only one because we have our producer, Robert, who's always with us, but you rarely hear his voice. Except for
Hey, Robert, we will allow you.
Once.
We will allow you to speak now.
Thank you. You guys had me on as a guest about 20 episodes ago, and so I guess about every 6 months I get to talk, but I'll take advantage of it.
Right.
Yes,
and
you
what
should.
is so? You have some big news as well.
Yeah, well, so shortly after CJ let us know that Terry was pregnant, we found out that my wife was pregnant. Well, I shared the news that my wife Victoria.
Yay!
So we're about 5 days behind Terry and CJ. We have to keep reminding ourselves that it's not a race.
It's not a
race. We're excited to go through this journey together.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. So many babies.
Babies.
Yeah. So we have two guys here with spouses that are pregnant. We're getting ready for newborns. And so what better time to, Ted, open up this conversation and talk about, hey, how do we prepare our marriage for our first baby? Because I hear that we're not the only people that are pregnant. There are lots of people that are pregnant,
Believe
right?
it or not.
I've
Yes.
heard that too.
Yeah, you've heard the rumor.
Yeah.
It just keeps happening all over the world.
Right.
It sustains our existence.
And if you go on Facebook, you really know because like every other post is a gender reveal or a birth announcement. So
it is.
It's all over the place.
And we're excited for people to see, CJ, how you guys announced that you were pregnant. I love the way you did it because you had said on social media, and maybe this is a topic for another day, but just how you'd see everybody on social media going, hey, we're pregnant. And you're thinking, wow, it seems so easy for you.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, transparently, I mean, Terry and I, my wife and I are on Facebook, and, you constantly, as Afton said, see gender reveals, baby announcements, and that kind of a thing. And throughout our long journey, those were some of the hardest moments and hardest days, because every time you'd see that, it would sting a little. And I think that had more to do with us processing it, but because the truth is you don't know if that took them 4 weeks or 4 years to get to that announcement. So when Terry and I decided to share the news publicly that we were pregnant, we thought, hey, let's do this a little differently. So we actually had documented our journey throughout the past couple of years of, trying to get pregnant, and then compiled that, and then made a little video to share the journey of getting pregnant, not just the moment and the announcement of it, if that makes sense.
Oh, so great. And we're going to put that video link in our show notes, too.
Yeah, and you better watch it with tissues.
Exactly. It is good stuff. Yeah, having a baby, it is a big deal. Yes, it's happening all over the world, but it never doesn't feel like important and amazingly special, and it always feels like a miracle. And when you think about when people make the decision to have a baby, there's all different reasons. There's good reasons, and then I've heard crazy reasons like we're really struggling, so a baby will fix that.
Right,
and I'm like, our house is really leaking, so we're going to take off the roof. That's what it feels like a little bit to me. And so, and so there's lots of great joys with having a baby, absolutely. But there's also some challenges that, I think a lot of couples aren't ready for. But if we can kind of talk about those a little bit, and there can be some conversations that are had before baby gets here instead of like in the middle of the night, when you're both exhausted, that can go a really, really, really long way. Because babies, I always say this: having a newborn is like someone giving you a coyote. It's really big. Not really big. It's just loud.
It's a really big deal.
It's a really big deal. And they're like,
Big
put this in
deal.
your back room if you've made really cute and get yourself some sleep. Like
Right.
that's always the irony of nurseries for me. Was always, it's this perfect little paradise, and then there's this screaming baby that's just making you think, am I losing my mind?
Yeah, that's a great point too, because up to this point, we've known for a couple of months now that we're pregnant and just announced it. But up to this point, pretty much the only thing Terry and I have really talked about is what the nursery is going to look like and all the things that we need to buy. Like that's pretty much been at the top of our list. Like, what's it going to look like? What do we need to buy? How much money do we need to spend? And that's kind of been it, up to this point, because that's all we'd really know, I guess, to really be thinking about at this point to get ready for the arrival of it, not the raising of it.
Right. But you know what? That's totally fine. Like that piece of it is really fun. You want to keep talking about that. You want to, for us, names were a really big deal and talked about that a lot. And you want to have those joys. I think it's when people don't have the other important conversations on top of those. So keep having those.
Yeah.
We're just encouraging couples to add a few things. So I'm really excited about this episode because I feel like what we're about to share is going to be really, really practical for people that are hearing it. And in the show notes, we're going to give them some questions we're going to talk about on here that I thought, if couples go through this before baby's born, I think this could matter. So I'm excited about this episode.
So let's dive into it. So a couple finds out that they're pregnant. They go through all those, emotions. Maybe they announce it. They share it with their family and friends, and life's good. And now they're just kind of bumping along, making their Amazon wish lists and registries. When do they need to start processing what happens next, and what tensions do they need to be aware of that are coming at them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of great questions that can be had. I think there's several things that we're going to hopefully help people talk through, but we've got to move past just the nursery and the names to some deeper questions. So, and I think this is all what makes couples win, because I think a lot of times couples aren't set up to win because you just don't realize what's about to happen. And every delivery is way different. Every baby is really, really different. And a lot of times too, I think couples are getting a lot of advice from people because people have good hearts. They want to share their story, and this is what we found out, and this is what you quote unquote need to do. And then it's just a totally different deal. So the preparation from people's stories it's not a negative one, but I think it's kind of been the thing that couples have leaned into, and then when their story's not like that, they feel like something's wrong. So I think all these questions will allow couples to talk about things because their delivery and their baby's going to be very unique.
Yeah. So before we dive into that, since we have given Robert a mic this week, producer Robert, I've got to ask, so what have you and Victoria talked through up to this point? Now, what has your conversation been like in preparation for your newborn?
Yeah, we're in pretty much the same situation you guys are. We've talked about names and what the nursery color is going to be like and what we think, our parents are going to react to it and how they're going to spoil it, which I'm a little worried about. But yeah, we haven't really thought through what it's going to mean for our marriage, which is kind of ironic since I work with Ted at Married People. But I'm going to be definitely listening in very intently to this episode, as I'm sure everyone listening is. So yeah, I mean, we haven't thought through those things as much, and I'm very interested to learn what a baby can do to a marriage.
Yes.
It's really fascinating to me. I feel like as an innocent bystander to the new baby situation, I just know of people that have babies. My sister has like 1 million babies, and my brother also has like 17 babies. So there's a lot of babies in our family, and I have always found it really interesting that there's some couples that you watch go through new babies, and they come out on the other side, and they're exactly the same. Like, you're like, oh, you're just like the same people. You just have a baby now. And then there's some couples that go through a new baby situation and, like, everything's different. Like, they are different people. They operate differently with each other. It's all about the baby, and you never really see them talking anymore. Like it's really interesting to me to watch couples go through new baby situations because you can kind of get a little glimpse into what's going on.
Absolutely.
totally, for
Yeah,
sure.
and babies can take over. I cannot tell you how many times I have talked to parents who we encourage them to go out on dates and maybe have a vacation, just the two of them. And they'll say, we haven't been on a date since the baby was born. And I'm like, oh, how old is, your child? 9. And some of them even more. I mean, I literally had a couple tell me that once their now 16-year-old was born, they have never had a babysitter. And so I think with this whole idea, I know, isn't that crazy? And the thing about this whole thing is that your marriage really does matter, and it matters to kids. In fact, some prenatal classes that are being provided at hospitals are including marriage classes for those that are married because it so impacts the health of the baby. And I don't know exactly how that all works, but we know that kids are very sensitive and they come in very, very sensitive. They sense stress. And so this is important for the baby, but it's also important for the two of you because this baby will one day move out of your house. One of the things I'm experiencing right now, and you'll be okay with that probably when that happens, but you've got to, from the very beginning, to say it's okay. And not only is it okay, it's important for us to think about our marriage despite the fact that we're parents, even despite the fact we're exhausted, despite the fact that this baby is requiring so much time and energy. But I always want to encourage couples, don't lose yourselves. Don't lose your marriage in the midst of baby because it's not good for babies, even I believe from the very beginning, to feel like the whole world is revolving around them and every noise that they make. And I think it starts early. Obviously in those first few months, there's a ton of energy and time poured into babies and way past those months. But again, as we're thinking this through, the goal for me is to help people think through how is this baby not going to wreck our marriage? Because the divorce rate goes way up between when someone's first-time parents between 0 and 4-year-olds.
Wow.
Well, and it seems like that's the big tension is that until a baby comes into the picture, there's just one focus in this relationship. It's the other person. And then now you've got like a third person
Sure.
there, and I'm sure that it feels like it's a really difficult thing to balance where your focus is, especially since the one that's new is actually in need of constant attention.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of men will say, once the baby was born, she never looked at me again. Or, and for on the side of new moms, they're like, are you kidding me? I'm exhausted. A lot of, women breastfeed, and I've had somebody attached to me several times today, and you're coming home, and I just need you to back off. And so there's the roles change. Men don't really know where to fit. We're going to talk about that. But so we could dive into this because I think the great news is clarity keeps you connected. Like we always talk, what's the truth? I really do feel like that when we're clear on things, that's the connection. I think arguments start when we aren't clear. Arguments start when we misunderstand each other. There's not bad hearts. There's just bad communication and bad perceptions of things. If we can help people get clear on this thing, it's amazing what people can handle, even the toughness of having a newborn.
It's the ambiguity, it's the cloudiness that just creates tension because you don't know where your spouse is in it. You don't know where the other person is. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What do they expect of me? What do I expect of them? And I feel like that's what, creates a lot of issues in marriage in general. And it's just magnified perhaps when you do have that first huge variable called a newborn, right?
Yeah, I will never forget with our first one, Nancy was in 31 hours of labor.
Ew.
Oh yeah, it was rough. There was no sleep for either of us for sure for for 48 hours, and then very little afterwards. And I just remember feeling absolutely crazy. In fact, at the hospital, I actually videoed the wrong baby in the nursery, and you can hear me crying a little bit in the background. And then you
Sorry,
hear me,
Ted, you videoed the wrong. Wait,
Yeah.
I feel. What's the story here? You videotaped a wrong baby in the hospital.
So I told Nancy she hadn't seen the baby in a while, and I was like, let me go video, and I'll bring it back. And I'm delirious, man. And
It's like the movies where you're like looking through a glass window at a bunch of babies, like that.
I went
It's
to the
like
baby
that?
showroom.
Yeah.
And I videoed the wrong baby car. And I'm videoing this baby, and I'm kind of, you can sniffing in the back, and then you see me realize, I go, oh, wait, I'm not sure this is him. And I remember
I like move the camera to the next baby. And
Listen,
I'm
I feel like I'm
this
going
one's beautiful.
going crazy. And I remember Nancy kept wanting graham crackers. So I went in and there was this nurse in there and I'm delirious. And I looked at her and go, will this ever get any better? I feel crazy. She said, sir, you're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But I'm literally trying to get a little love from the nurse beside the graham crackers going, because let me tell you, we had talked about everything in terms of names in our room. His nursery was the best, but I'm telling you, I just could not believe the exhaustion that was coming, and not even to mention her. And I was nothing compared to her and what she had been through, right?
Sure.
So yeah. So let's talk about some things on the front end. I think the first thing that I think couples need to talk about with each other, like, what's your fears? Like as a dad, as a mom, like, what are your fears? What do you fear most about having a newborn? And if you guys are comfortable with it, when you think about that, Robert and CJ, like, what's the fear for you?
Oh, man. Robert, you can go first.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. No. Gosh, I'm not sure. I think it's going to change as the pregnancy develops, and actually once we have the kid, I'm sure all of that will kind of, things will go out the window and things will be different. Looking at it from this perspective, Ted, you talking about being delirious and lack of sleep, I think that's one of the biggest fears for me, because I can't thrive on less than like 8 hours of sleep. I like my rest. And that's one of the consistent things that I keep hearing is, oh yeah, you're not going to get much sleep. You're going to be waking up at 3 a.m. And my sister actually just had her first child about 5 months ago. So I'm now an uncle as well. So this is, it's all changing for me. And they're talking about, hey, we're getting like 2 and 3 hours of sleep a night. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to take care of my household, take care of my family, do a job, all that kind of stuff, and not have rest? So that's, I think, one of the biggest fears for me.
Gotcha.
I would definitely resonate with what Robert said as far as, I think most people, when they talk about newborns, just kind of look at you kind of like with solemn eyes and are just like, you have no idea how hard it is. And it feels like you're preparing for battle a little bit. So I think that scares me just a little bit.
Right.
But, sitting here right now, we're just sitting in that, season of, okay, I hope the baby's developing well. And I hope that, the baby stays healthy. Hope that mom stays healthy. So I guess those are our fears right now. And those will transition as the pregnancy goes along. But just the unknown of it all, I think, is just the hardest part. Like, as Americans, we can know a lot of things, but how healthy this baby is going to be is just a huge variable, right?
Sure.
You just took the words right out of my mouth, because that's what I was about to add, is that's the unknown. That's kind of the root of all the fears, is just because this is a first kid, because we've seen other people be parents and that kind of thing, but because this is new to us, it's that not knowing and only hearing kind of like the war stories that other people have told us about it. Yeah. The unknown is the kind of scary thing.
Yeah.
Right. And there's lots of fears for people. There's fears of, people, what's it like going to be a new parent? Fear of what's it going to do to our finances, the fear of being able to do it all. Robert, you touched on that, the fears of how it's going to impact your career and postpartum depression and the baby's health, CJ, fear of losing your connection with each other. So I think just to have this conversation and just say, wow, this is kind of like what I'm kind of stressed out about. Those are not necessarily fun conversations, but they are important. And I think that clarity leads us to have a lot more empathy with each other and just to go, wow, I didn't know this piece of it. So, and we're more careful when that topic arises once the baby's here.
Yeah. All right. So, Ted, before we move on to the next question, just to kind of pull us back a little bit. So basically, you said clarity keeps you connected. And you gave us the first clarifying question, if you will. And it was, to reiterate, is what do you fear the most about having a newborn? So that's kind of the first clarifying question. And we're going to move on to some other clarifying questions here, right?
The next thing that I think we need to talk a little bit is about mom's recovery. And so, husbands, one of the greatest questions that you can ask is, what's our plan for taking care of you once the baby is born? Because I do feel like in the excitement of a baby, and I have been told this, hospitals will say, the most joyous place or the only joyous place of a hospital, is labor and delivery, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, mom's body and spirit have gone through a lot. And I think sometimes that gets neglected. I think a lot of times people put onto moms that this is supposed to be this big magical miracle thing and you're supposed to have all these amazing feelings. And for Nancy, that was one of the toughest things, that she wasn't feeling all this magical stuff. She was exhausted. She was having a really hard time breastfeeding, and she felt guilty that in the sea of all this chaos and her body recovering, that she wasn't feeling like a Hallmark card, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think for dads especially, and if there's any mother-in-laws or moms listening to go to, take care of mom. Mom needs to be taken care of this, from that to postpartum depression or a C-section or just even, natural delivery, that they've gone through a lot. I would watch my aunt do that with Nancy with all her babies. Mm-hmm. Like everybody comes flying in to see the baby. They don't even look at her. And I watched every single time my aunt, I've got the greatest picture of them too. I see her, she's leaned over, she's got her hand cupping her face. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things going, she knew to take care of her. So I think that's something, and husbands say, what's our plan for taking care of you once the baby's born? Because when you get your, we need to remember that, because moms go through a lot.
Yeah, I think it's kind of tough right now at this point, because CJ and I aren't the ones who are pregnant, right? We're not the ones, because even during the pregnancy and obviously after delivery happens, the woman's body's going through a lot of stuff, but it's hard for us to kind of empathize, especially at first. So that's what I'm trying to do, is keep putting myself in my wife's shoes and understanding like what she's going through and just giving her a lot more grace. And so I think that's how the pregnancy can help us prepare for the actual birth and being parents, is just kind of, hey, we're having to empathize and having to put ourselves in her shoes. So I think that's probably.
Yeah, and I would just add to I mean, this is a great question. What's our plan for taking care of you once the baby's born? And I think a good way to figure out what that is to start asking that question even earlier than delivery. Yes. So month 7, month 8, month 9, continually asking yourself what you can be doing and what plan you can put in place to take care of mom, during those last 4 weeks before delivery even, because those are some difficult weeks as well, for sure. So, and then that might make the transition into taking care of her after delivery a little bit more natural. Absolutely. And it just starts a conversation, because once, baby's here, then she will know how to answer that question. But I think for guys, and I would say to moms, take care of yourself too. That's okay. It's okay if you're not feeling magical things, that bluebirds are not landing on your shoulder. That's okay. And who's your friend? Who's that aunt? Who's that person that's going to love on you? Does that make sense?
Don't you think it's so funny that on kids' birthdays, we celebrate the kid? I just, after watching my sister go through all of the labor she's gone through, and then, the year rolls around, and it really feels like an anniversary of the day that my sister went through the most painful experience of her life, and we're like, yay, the baby is one! And it's this feels backwards. You know what, Afton? And that's the kind of perspective we value here on the podcast. I just feel like when it happens to me, I'm literally going to have no problem just milking the recovery months for all it's worth.
So Afton's going to need a different type of encouragement. Right. That's okay. I love it.
We have a different set of questions just for Hudson.
Yes. I love it.
Only for Hudson.
Yes.
All right, Ted. So we've talked through a couple of questions. Let's get to the next few questions here too.
Yeah. I hate this word, but it's a reality. I think you got to talk about task. When you have a new baby, there's lots of tasks. There's feeding and sleeping and diaper changes and strolling and all the different things. And then for the big people, there's still grocery shopping and chores and meals and careers and paying bills. There's just so much to go on. So I think what's healthy, because one of the biggest tensions for couples in general are household duties and chores. That's a big source of tension. So this kind of applies for everybody. But just kind of sit there and say, all right, let's list out all of these things and start talking about who's going to do what and when, and just kind of have those expectations ahead of time. Because this is one of those things where there's a lot of imagining and dreaming and planning in both a dad and a mom's head as you're waiting on the baby, right?
Yeah.
And part of that dreaming is you're dreaming of what it's going to be like, and here's the expectations.
For sure.
And so there can be wait a minute, when I was dreaming about this, you changed all the diapers. And when I was dreaming about this, I got to sleep every night through the night. So I think it's sit down with each other, just draft a master list. What are the things I'm talking about, from grocery shopping to changing diapers.
All right, Ted. So creating a master to-do list. But what's our clarifying question that couples need to discuss?
Yeah, I think you sit down and ask this question: what are the tasks we should include on our master to-do list? What are all those things?
Yep.
And the more granular, the more specific you get on that, the better.
That's great.
Secondly, what is the task you're looking forward to the most, and what is the task you are dreading the most? I think that I've watched this happen before with couples where, one of our friends, she told her husband, they were kind of having the same kind of conversation. She goes, I hate cleaning the bathroom. She goes, I don't mind cleaning the bathroom. She goes, are you kidding me? He goes, no, that's something I can do for you. So that's a kind of a loaded question a little bit. What are you looking most forward to? What are you dreading the most? And I think this gives us lots of insight on how to serve each other.
That's great. That's great. And if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, we're throwing out a lot of questions here, I'll just go ahead and throw this in here now. You don't have to be trying to remember all of this, as we're discussing it. We'll have a list of all of these questions nicely compiled for you in our podcast notes at the end. So I just wanted to give you that little relief. But before we move on, Robert, I've got to ask. So, what are you most looking forward to? Because that's a good question, but really, what task are you dreading the most?
Obviously, it's going to be the one that involves poop.
I mean, maybe.
No one looks forward to the poop.
Thanks for answering, Robert.
No, she's not wrong though. Diapers is scary.
Yeah,
So.
no, for sure. I mean, okay. Other than diapers, is there anything else? I just got to know.
I need to read over this list of. We haven't even thought through the task list of what we have to do yet. So we're preparing for this. We're building up to this because this was Victoria's idea. We have 2 different lists that we're going through right now. One of them is a like get ready for the baby list. Like, hey, we need to do this in the house, and we need to buy these things, and we need to do this. But then we also have a baby bucket list of these are the things we can't do once the baby gets here, and so these are the things that we're gonna go hike Stone Mountain, and we're gonna go to this kind of movie, and we're gonna go do these things because we know we can't in 8 months. So those are the 2 lists we're working off of now, and I guess maybe we're a little bit in denial for the once
Right.
the child actually gets here.
Afton, you don't have a newborn, but what would you hate the most about?
I have a newborn 14-year-old. That's true. Which is basically the same thing.
What task do you dread the most with your newborn 14-year-old?
Oh man, you don't even want to know. You don't want to even know what happens when they get to be 14-year-olds.
A whole different set of dread.
There's a little bit less poo, but not much.
That's amazing. All right, Ted. We'll keep this conversation going. So, what are the next questions we need to be discussing to help our marriages prepare for a new baby?
Well, I want to give an amen to Robert's list of what's our bucket list before the baby gets here, because we talk a lot about having fun. You're putting deposits in the relational bank, and nothing does that more than, hey, let's go hike Stone Mountain, or let's go do whatever it is we love to do, so that when it is tough, you're like, oh, we're really connected. So you're going into staying connected. So I love that.
That's her idea. I can't claim it.
Victoria, you're a smart lady.
Yep.
Next, this is a biggie, and Robert's already touched on this, and we've touched on it a couple of times, and it is sleep. And on 2 sides, there's baby sleep that you need to talk about, and there's your sleep that you need to talk about. Let's talk first about baby sleep.
Don't babies just sleep all the time?
In the day, so they can keep you up at night. That's kind of how that rolls a little bit. Yeah.
They sound like jerks.
Yeah. That's the thing. All new babies are real jerks.
They're all nocturnal.
Right.
They are all
How did they
nocturnal.
learn to all be nocturnal?
Well, they've been in the dark for so long.
Robert's over here bent double on that line.
I mean, right? It's only logical after.
That's true. That's only logical.
They're like, oh, it's time for me to be up.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so this is one of those things. I don't think anybody's at their best when they get woken up in the middle of the night or they're sleep deprived. So we got to manage this thing. It's going to be tough at first, and you're going to probably hear some of your friends who say, oh, they slept through the night in a week, and good for them, but tell them not to talk to you anymore for a while.
Right.
And again,
unfriend those people on Facebook.
unfriend-
Do not be friends with those people.
It could be your story, but I think a lot of times you're not thinking about how we're going to deal with baby sleep until you're in the middle of it.
That's when you find out their newborn's a dog, by the way. That's like, oh, that makes more sense now.
Howling in the night. Yeah. So here's a couple things. What are the baby's sleeping arrangement? Where's this baby going to sleep? Because some people say, I want a little crib in our room. Some people say I want it in the nursery. It's just something you're getting ready for. The other big thing is, how do we plan on getting baby to sleep or back to sleep? There are lots of different ways people want to do this. There is, how long do we let the baby cry itself to sleep? I mean, that comes with so much emotion, right? You're sitting there by the door and you go, there's different models of how long do you let the baby cry? What do you do to soothe them? I mean, one of the best books that I've seen on this is Moms on Call, Basic Baby Care 0 to 6 months. And it really talks about how to get your kids on a good sleeping schedule.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that really needs to be talked through before. You don't want to be arguing about how long to let the baby cry in the middle of the night. You're just exhausted. So really thinking that through, kind of, what is your philosophy? We can push several different ones, but where is baby? How are they going to sleep, and how are you going to get them back to sleep? Or your plan to get them back to sleep?
So we already got that book. So we're because Terry and I are going to be parenting experts, clearly.
Obviously, yes.
No, we were gifted that book, and so we already started flipping through that. And what we realized is it's going to be so helpful to have a frame of reference or a plan to revert back to, rather than treating every single situation on its own. It's like, we've got a situation now. What does the book say? Let's make a decision based on the plan that we've agreed upon, rather than taking every situation as it comes. And I think we're already realizing that that's going to be huge for us to stay on the same page and stay clear with each other about the way we're parenting.
I wish we had done more things parenting-wise like we did with baby sleep. Like, we look back now and go, we did really good with that. We should have applied how we handled that to other parenting things, because we were really methodical about that and really stuck to the plan. And our kids, it paid dividends for years. Like, my brother's like, he had to talk his daughter into going to bed her entire life. They'd do, 15 glasses of water and 12 books, and she'd cry, and she'd be in and out of the bed with them. For us, we're like, we're going to put them in their crib. They're going to sleep in their room. We're going to allow them to soothe themselves to sleep. We'll come in and check on them after they cry for a little bit. You walk out and you want to cry yourself. You go in, and they're all good sleepers. And they've all, bedtimes, have always been easy here. Yet I wish we'd applied this with other areas. It just speaks to consistency and being on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, to reiterate those questions, what's our plan for where the baby will sleep? What's our plan to get the baby back to sleep when it wakes up? And who's going to feed the baby and when? So those are 3 clarifying
And probably
questions.
Also, what show are we going to binge watch when we're up in the middle of the night?
Right.
Totally.
That is
Probably be on the same page about that.
An adaptation question,
Yeah,
number
sure.
4,
Yeah.
an optional question.
Yeah,
there
Ted
for
just
you.
forgot to write that one down.
Right. And yeah.
Because you'd be knowing, if it was back in the day, I would have been watching Netflix, let me tell you. The other piece of sleep, of course, is the parents' sleep. And how is this going to work? And boy, this can be, a landmine for couples. If you need to figure this out. So there's a couple of different thoughts on this. There is, who's going to get up and feed the baby? Mm-hmm. For some, if there's breastfeeding, that's obviously mom. But a lot of times it's like, what is dad's role at that point? Is dad getting up with her? Is dad helping her? What's dad's role? And I think what you both have to think through this is, how do you each get the most amount of sleep? Like, if it's dad that's staying home, with baby, then mom's going to need more sleep at night for work, and then vice versa. And so I've seen this happen a little bit, and I struggle a little bit with it. A lot of times I've seen new moms say, I want you to get up in the middle of the night to support me. And I get that, and maybe we do that for a week or so, but I think it's kind of like you're shooting your general a little bit, like to allow that sleep to happen.
Yeah.
And again, I know I am talking, so it's whatever the two of you decide and whatever it means the most to you. But I think when it comes to sleep, I mean, it is a really physical thing. So I think we're talking about a lot of emotional and relational things in all of this. But I think the more you can look at sleep as a physical need, the more healthy it's going to be.
So did I hear you hinting at, though, that in your expertise and in your years of working with couples, that it's best for the dad not to stay up while mom is feeding, that kind of a thing?
CJ, you're just fishing for the answer you want to hear.
Whoa.
You're like, I don't know. Ted said I'm supposed to be
just
sleeping.
asking the expert, Afton.
Well, I read this hilarious study, though, and they did noises that wake women up and noises that wake men up. The number one noise that will wake up a woman is a crying baby, and it doesn't even make a man's top 10. So, and I don't know what that says about men in general.
Well, I wonder if punching him in the arm is a number one way to wake him up in the middle of the night, because I don't think anyone has a problem with that.
Yes, you just punch him out. You know what? I'm gonna.
You're like, oh, now that you're awake, can you hear the baby?
Yeah. Yep.
Now that you're awake, can you hear the baby?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I think it's a smart question, though, to talk about that, because I
Sure.
think it could be a very easy way for the mom to resent the husband if they're not on the same page about it. Because I would feel
Absolutely.
that way if I'm like, I am the only way this baby eats and sleeps and whatever, and you get to sleep because that's important for someone to be sleeping. But I feel like that would be a very easy way for me to feel resentful of them.
Absolutely. And that is why we were like, oh, you got to talk this out. And I'm really hesitant in giving any kind of real, like, you have to do it like this. I think a resentment is a really emotional thing. And I think that it's a big deal, and it is a big deal for a lot of couples. So have it on the front end. What is this going to look like for us? How do I give that time back to you? And like, as you're planning that, it's not just about whoever's going to work getting their sleep. It's about everybody getting sleep. So how is mom going to get that extra sleep the next day? Are you going to take the first feeding in the morning? We're going to do a bottle just once in the morning, and you're going to sleep in until 10 o'clock. Or Saturdays, I'm food man, or I'm food lady. Whatever that is, this is about getting both people the maximum amount of sleep. And I'm not sure necessarily that getting up together is always the best way to do that. That's all I'm suggesting. But the biggest thing, more than anything, I want to clarify is get a plan.
Yeah, that's great.
And
So-
it's going to change every stinking week. And a baby, does not work like a clock. So this is a conversation you're going to have over and over and over. But have it when you're awake and not in the middle of the night.
So the two clarifying questions we just added there was, what's each parent's role when baby is feeding in the night? And again, this isn't a one spouse's get out of jail free card either
Not at
way.
all.
This is a question that leads to the next question. How do you each get the most amount of sleep possible? So that's huge. Those are great questions to address on the front end. So we're getting super practical here, Ted, and I love this. I love this. So what's the next set of questions that couples need to be asking in preparation for their first baby?
Yeah, I think a really important thing that couples have to look at is their roles. Like, what roles am I going to play? What roles are you going to play? And start asking questions. What do you think will be your biggest challenge as a parent? What are you looking forward to the most as a parent? But when it comes to roles, and we'll talk about this stereotypically, knowing that people can adjust and shift, but there are some stereotypically different things between moms and dads. One of the things that psychologists, there's a dynamic with moms called maternal gatekeeping. And it's when moms control dad's household responsibilities and how they're interacting with the children. Because moms, they're pretty smart, aren't they?
Well, I mean, I think what you're trying to say without saying it is that you think women are smarter and better
Oh, I would say that 100%. Like
than the other sex, whatever it might be.
Yeah, whatever. I'm telling you, my wife has a gear and a radar and a connection with our kids that, and I don't know if all families feel this, that I just don't have. I mean, she always has. And so moms, I think, and maybe this is hardwired into their DNA, they turn into mama bear a little bit, like, I'm protecting this baby even from my husband a little bit. And that
happens to a lot of moms that are around the baby more, right? I mean, like, because there are some situations where the mom is the one that goes back to work.
Totally.
And the dad stays home with the baby. And in that case, it might be that the dad is the one going like, oh, you don't know when he goes down or when you know, and then the mom comes home because it could be either gender, but it happens with whichever parent is probably just feels the primary burden, or if there is one.
I think so. I do think that women have in their connection, whether they're going back to work, he's staying home, however that goes, that they have this sense of this is how this needs to go. And I don't know if that's because they've been living with this baby inside their body for 9 months, and they do know the baby better. I think what happens is mom will protect, and say, Dad, you're doing it the wrong way. Don't do it like this. Do it like that. And they're probably exhausted trying to control the situation.
Don't you think that's hilarious though? Because to me, it's always like, you've been a parent the exact same amount of minutes I have. We've known this baby. This baby has been around for us to make decisions about for the exact same amount of time. Like, you've changed just as many. You've seen as many diapers get changed as I have. Like, we have the same amount of life experience here. So it's always interesting to me that, like, dads do always seem to like default to like, well, I don't know, let me ask. And it's like the mom has to be the one to make all the decisions, which again, I just am ringing the bell because I'm like, I feel like if I were in that situation, I would feel resentful. Like, you can figure it out too. I'm trying to figure it out.
Right.
Well, I think going, again, to, I guess, take the more stereotypical route here just a little bit, I'm already noticing that Terry and I are taking on slightly different roles, just in that Terry's doing a lot more up to this
Of
point.
making the baby and growing
Right,
it.
right.
Yes, that's correct, CJ.
Right. Oh, okay.
She's doing basically all the work right now.
But she's doing more reading and prep on the newborns and the parenting and taking care of the child way ahead of time. I'm still working my way into some of those, articles and books and that sort of thing. And I'm doing more research on like getting the right fire extinguisher or getting like a baby first aid kit,
Why
that
is
kind of
your
stuff.
baby making fire?
I don't know.
What are you going to put in its
you
nursery?
We have a lot of flammable items we're putting in the nursery. So we're just, just making sure.
I
Good,
think
you're on the
what
same
happened-
page about the fire
No,
extinguisher.
I'm just like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, oh, I need a baby first aid kit. Oh, we should actually probably get a fire extinguisher for our house. That kind of a thing. Sorry,
Let me clarify.
Robert.
I think CJ just watched The Incredibles 2.
Right.
He must
And he
have,
saw
yes.
that baby that, had all the superpowers,
yeah.
including catching fire.
He might have a Jack
So
with
I think
17
that's-
powers.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get that fire extinguisher ready.
Because that's where my
When that
mind went
baby
immediately.
comes. Yes.
But all that to say, I think Terry is reading more about it ahead of time and learning more. And so that's already going to set her up just a little bit better from
Because
the
she's
get-go.
just smarter and
And
better.
I do realize that you want to pick up something and it hit me right now. I get it. I
know.
sense it. I can feel it in the room. This is not TED information. This is like studies and research that moms, this is not me. Don't make me a victim. That
trying to push the
moms,
blame.
there's this dynamic with moms. And so
I think Afton's about to set the podcast studio on fire.
We need a
Where's
fire
the
extinguisher
fire?
Where's that
in
fire?
here.
And what they found in these same studies is the more maternal gatekeeping there is, the less involved the dad is. Because the dads really do feel like goofballs with babies. I mean, we really do. Like, there's just, and this is, I love babies. I'm pretty darn good with babies. I've been called the baby whisperer, so I can't put my thing, and I'm awkward with baby thing. But for a lot of guys, they feel distant. So what I would say to mom is, you are smarter. I agree with that 100%. You do know more what's going on, but unless he's burning the house down, if he's helping, and if he's not hurting anything, if it doesn't matter, if it's just a different way, let him do it.
So it sounds like maternal instinct is a real thing as far as we can tell. But do you think that there is a true paternal instinct that something kicks into us naturally as fathers that we'll kind of figure it out once we get there?
The only
You're
thing
talking to two potential new dads here.
give me hope.
Real new dads. Give them some hope, Ted.
I don't know if I've studied enough on that. The
Do
only
I
thing
put the fire extinguisher in the crib or outside?
we're preparing for some episode on anger, and I saw this research the other day. It was talking about when men get scared, they get angry. Like, that's our response. So that's the only thing paternal. And I don't know if you're angry and protection. So I don't know if there's necessarily a paternal instinct. That's something we need to study. I do think there is a maternal instinct. I think it's real. I think studies show that it's real. I just think it's a huge source of tension because a lot of times, I saw one great interview, and this lady said, he would be doing something. I would say, just give the baby here. Just give him here. And then I would be mad that my husband wasn't helping me enough. So I think it's this thing of going, all right, moms, he's trying. He's a little goofy at it. Give him a break a little bit. You can train him a little bit. You can teach him, but let him be involved. And dads, I would say to you, she does know more. She is typically more inclined and connected in that way, and to listen to her and don't take it to heart. It's what moms want to do.
Well, and to try. Even if
Yes.
you feel like you've gotten to a place where it's like, oh, whatever I do, she's going to correct me. Like, she appreciates that you're trying to do something.
Yeah, you keep trying. Yeah, that's it. Stay in the game, guys. Because if anybody gets grace in this situation. If anybody gets more margin for error on this, it's for sure mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ted, we've been talking about roles, but we kind of got a little sidetracked with some of our conversation. But to recap, when we're talking about roles, the two questions that spouses need to be asking each other are: what do you think will be your biggest challenge as a parent? And what are you looking forward to the most about being a parent?
The new baby smell.
Right. The new baby smell. It's like a new car
smell.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I don't know. I was gonna say something about, and then you, after 10 years, it smells really bad, and you trade it in.
After 10 years, there's spoiled milk.
Right. Well, this has been a fun conversation so far. I know that we're running a little bit long this week, and we have a lot more to get to, right? We've got a lot more to get to in this conversation. So we're going to break this up into 2 parts. So as we wrap up, our one simple thing for this week is to just sit down with your spouse and ask each other these questions. And you can find all of these questions nice and neatly compiled for you on our website, marriedpeople.org/podcast. So if you're exercising or you're driving, you couldn't remember all those questions, no worries, we have you covered. So just visit our website, marriedpeople.org/podcast. And then stay tuned for part 2 next week. So you'll answer these questions, talk to your spouse about these questions, and then come back for another set of questions for part 2 of this conversation about preparing your marriage for your first baby. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast through your Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, consider leaving us a 5-star review. That would really help us out. And finally, if another married couple came to mind as you're listening to this episode, perhaps one that's expecting their first baby soon, consider sharing this episode with them as well. Until next time, I'm CJ.
I'm Afton.
I'm Ted.
I'm Robert.
And thank you for listening.